And now for something completely different.
Well, John, I think it's time to rock.
It is. And do you have the horns? Do you have the?
Isn't that I love you? I love you, right?
Yeah, the thumb has to come in for it to be the ram's horns.
You know what, John?
Yeah, this is.
Thank you. What can I say?
This is one of the only other ones I know that.
What can I say? I'm a real rocker, John. I love it. I love you.
Yeah. I love you, Black Sabbath. So we've never done a Black Sabbath song, Dave. What do you know of Black Sabbath?
Ozzy Osbourne was the lead
correct.
singer.
Ozzy Osbourne's the lead singer.
I know that one time someone threw him what he thought was a fake bat, and he bit its head off, and it turns out it was a real bat.
Yeah, he bit into it. We'll say, yeah, they kind of exaggerate a little bit with the head
maybe
off.
I don't know. I've never seen it.
Yeah,
needless
to say, Ozzy did have to go get a tetanus shot at the hospital.
That makes sense to me. I know that he talks like this, and very hard to saying. That's and yet you can understand him pretty well when he sings. So.
Yeah. He gets the point across.
Yeah, I think I've pretty much exhausted my Ozzy Osbourne facts. I have 100% heard more than a couple Black Sabbath songs.
Really?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, friends like Black Sabbath and
one
War Pigs.
Yeah. I love the cake version of that myself.
The cake version of War Pigs is fantastic. Also, like half the length.
Yeah.
Also, trumpets.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I've definitely heard some Black Sabbath, but I certainly have never heard whole albums. I've never heard deep cuts. I've probably heard their pop hits. I've probably heard their most popular, well-known songs.
You mean you've heard their roundabouts?
Yes. I still don't know what that's from, but yes. It sounds familiar. Have we done that song?
Yes, it's by Yes.
Okay, that's right.
It's
Yes.
It's one of the 3 songs by Yes that everybody knows.
Owner of a Lonely Heart.
That's another one. All Good People. That's another one. Anyway, so yeah, this is not one of the Black Sabbath go-tos for people, I guess. But I heard Ozzy do it live back in the 80s, and I fell in love with it. I think I actually prefer the Ozzy version, but I think that that's probably more because I heard it that way first. So my brother had this album, so in essence, I had this album.
Don't know how that works.
Yeah. So I've been listening to this album, since the mid '70s at least, and I would say that a lot of people consider Black Sabbath the first heavy metal band.
I certainly do not have a breadth of knowledge enough to confirm nor deny that.
Okay,
sure.
Well, let's listen to a song about fairies wearing boots, and first of all, let's see if you can explain it to me because I don't know what the heck he's talking about. But also, let's see if you think this is heavy enough.
Well, they don't want to hurt their little feet, John. Little feetsies.
Oh.
I gotta turn this up. Well, I gotta say that ending kind of walk through memory lane of their albums was actually a neat way to do that.
Yeah, it was.
Okay, they have such a specific way of dropping the music but keeping the drums going and then bringing the music back in that I weirdly feel is recognizable, like a stylistic choice they do in multiple songs that Black Sabbath does. I don't know if they pioneered that, if they were the real progenitor of it, which it could very well be.
Yeah. I mean, I'd say a lot of what you hear them do, they were the first to do. I mean, maybe some influence from some local garage bands or whatever, but I would say that a lot of what Sabbath did, they kind of designed. I mean, as far as I know. Again, I'm a music lover. I'm not an expert in all things Sabbath or who was the first heavy metal, and I may have just, done sacrilege or something. Who knows? But as far as I remember, in the days and all that, that was the hardest thing out in 1970.
I mean, I'm sure there was some small group of Norwegians that were rocking it much harder than that.
Well, I mean, there was Born to Be Wild was out before then,
but
so there were some rockin' songs.
Like metal.
Yeah, that's what I mean. It was like hard rock, and then it seemed to me Sabbath just kind of metal. They just pushed it right over the edge, And then, of course, it is going along. What do we hear? Pull Me Under was a pretty hard rockin' tune.
Yeah, Pull Me Under was definitely.
So I think they kind of really popular. It's kind of like, did Elvis start rock and roll? Well, no, of course not. But he certainly didn't bring it to the masses. He did do that. Did Black Sabbath invent heavy metal? I think to a large degree they probably did, but they may have been borrowing this and that from other things, So to me, it counts. They're in the club. I mean, they can even use the pool.
In my world, when you say heavy metal music, they are one of the first bands that pops into my head. And this is super out of touch, doesn't really know music well me. So they've got to be pretty up there in the metal zeitgeist to pull that off.
Yeah. I mean, you thought Led Zeppelin was a metal band.
I did always think they were a metal band, and then you showed them to me, and I was like, "Oh, never mind." I was way off.
They're kind of folky.
Yeah, they're practically dipping a toe in country. This is
they dipped a toe in country, and they're certainly blues influenced.
But I mean, this song was fun. It was exactly what I expected. Is one of the only criticisms I'll give it. Oftentimes, I don't know what's coming, and I do think this was just Black Sabbath. Like, it sounded like I expected it to sound, from Ozzy's vocals to how they played it. And I don't really mean that as a full criticism, because obviously it sounded great. It was Black Sabbath, and they did an excellent job, and I was fully on board with it, but nothing happened in it that wasn't expected. There was going to be some hard drumming. There was going to be the sick guitar solo. There was going to be the driving bass throughout the entire thing.
But did you notice the progressive nature of it also in the change up?
And so that's what I was about to say. But what I didn't see coming was it felt like it did have those movements of classical, those movements of prog that you've introduced me to so much. And that part was unexpected. I didn't see Black Sabbath having hard changes in what was going on musically. And then you had Ozzy, killing it throughout the whole song. I love his voice. I think he's fantastic. He's unique. You can always pick him out. Anytime you hear him singing, you're like, that's Ozzy. And I like that about him. He absolutely kills it.
Yeah, he does. But you're right. If they are a metal band, and it's surprising to hear the nuance of a metal song, where most metal songs, if it's straight up metal and it's not prog metal or new prog, most metal songs start off and end, and in the middle, and it's the same. Right? I mean, and maybe I'm being overgeneralizing, and I probably am, and I'll get flamed for that. But
deservedly so.
Yeah, this is Black Sabbath's first album, so not bad for. And what was Ozzy? Maybe 18 at the time.
Wow.
Maybe.
And yet he already had done enough drugs that he was seeing a fairy in boots.
A fairy. Yeah. Wait a minute. You don't see them in the boots?
Yeah, I actually really don't think that there's some deep meaning to this song. I think it's pretty much just they were all sitting around doing some drugs, and they were like, man, what if like fairies wore boots? How funny would that be? You know, and then they wrote a song about it.
If they were tripping, he may well have seen a fairy wearing boots.
Yeah, and then even in the song, it's just like, yeah. So then I went to the doctor, and I was like, hey, man, can you give me something? I seen fairy boots. And the doctor's like, oh, well, it's because you do a lot of drugs.
You're tripping, man.
You're tripping, man. But yeah, totally fun. Would happily do more Black Sabbath. I noticed that and I don't know if it's the same album that this song was off of, but in the very beginning, War Pigs was the first song on one of the albums that popped up. So was War Pigs on this album?
Yes, War Pigs, Paranoid, which is one of their big ones. Iron Man, of course, you've heard from the Iron Man movies.
I can't believe those songs were on their first album.
Yeah.
I never really thought about it a ton, but I would have said, they got a couple albums under their belt and then put out these masterpieces.
Yeah, no, they came first.
Good.
And I would say that by 75, I was no longer buying any Sabbath albums.
Because they got it all out in the beginning. So they did the opposite. They didn't grow into their music. They got it all done up front.
I'm a music lover, as you know, and I bought a lot of records and cassettes and 8-tracks, okay? But after Sabbath Bloody Sabbath, the music that I heard, hey, Sabbath has a new album, and it would play it. I'm like, yeah, I know. I know Ozzy left the band. I don't know if that's the period when that occurred. I don't know enough about Sabbath and their history, but that could be why. Maybe Ozzy left the band.
Interesting. And sad. It sucks when a band puts out so much amazing music and then, they keep putting out music, but it's just not that great.
Yeah, I mean, the guy they replaced him with, if I'm not mistaken, was no slacker. Let me just look it up before I put my foot in my mouth.
Oh, but that's my favorite.
I know you do love when I put my foot in my mouth.
Brings me joy.
Dio, yeah, Ronnie James Dio. That's who I thought it was. And you've heard of Dio, I'm sure it's somehow, some way.
Dio sounds familiar. The Ronnie James now.
Oh, well, his name, yeah, Dio was his band, and his name, and he was called Dio, but his name is Ronnie James Dio. He joined in 79, so no, Ozzy was still with them when I stopped listening. I don't know why.
Maybe you're just a hater, John. You ever contemplate that? Like maybe you're the problem?
Oh, I know I'm evil on a stick.